Hi, I'm Manda McKay. I'm a professional artist, and I'm making these videos to give you tips to help enhance your creativity. And these tips are meant for any level of expertise, but for this particular tip, your level of expertise might factor in to how you actually approach this. For this tip, I want to thank Celeste for giving me this idea, but this tip is to revisit an old project. Or if you really are just starting out and you haven't done that many projects, it might be an old idea. But is there something that you started working on at some point and then you stopped before it was finished and you still feel this pull to go back and work on it again? Now, I can tell you about a time that this happened in my own life. I am predominantly an oil painter, and there was this one painting that I kept trying to do and I just kept failing. And I think I tried it 3 times and then finally revisited it, and the 4th time was the charm. But the painting was called No One Harms Respected Ladies, and it's a statement about violence against women. So I paint still lifes of assembled natural objects. And in this case, I had a flower that was very delicately balanced on top of cactus spines. And I really wanted to paint this, and 3 times I tried and it just wasn't working, and I gave up and basically just threw away the canvas. And then finally, the 4th time, after a couple years, I came back to it and it worked. So if you find yourself in this position and you really want to go back and revisit something old or an old idea, if you really have very little experience in your creative practice, the first question you want to ask yourself is, why do I feel compelled to revisit this? Because that's going to make a bit of a difference. So for me, I felt compelled to go back and try to keep finishing this painting because I thought that the concept of violence against women was something that I needed to speak out against. And to me, my art is often a form of activism. And it gives me a voice when I don't really have words, or when nobody will listen to my words. They'll look at my paintings and absorb the meaning. So this was something that was really important to me. And that meant that I was going to, when I came back to it, I was going to put my best effort into it. Now, maybe you're the sort of person who you just hate that there's an unfinished project. You might not feel that strongly about it, but you just feel like you can't move on to the next thing until you have closure on this one. That's going to make a difference in how much effort you might want to put into it. And I've actually done a video previously about doing a low effort version of something. Because depending on what your goal is, it might be better just to do something that maybe you aren't putting a ton of time into, just if you need it for practice, or if in this case you just want closure. Now for me, I put my 100% best effort into it because it was something very, very important to me to have a really good finished piece of this painting. But think about this. Think about what your reasons would be for revisiting it, because like I said, that really is going to make a difference in how you go about it. Now, the other question that you want to ask yourself is, well, why did you stop in the first place? Why did you abandon the project? And if you are starting out, again, this will make a difference. If you are starting out, you likely just don't have the skills built up yet, and maybe it was too difficult, or maybe there was something that you really didn't know how to do, if it was something that was a more complicated process, and maybe you need to do a little bit of research there. But if it's something that was kind of complicated and you just stopped because you didn't think you could do a really good job on it, well, you might consider, again, just doing something, doing a version of it just to get the practice. And if it's something that was a very important idea to you, then you'll have practice and you'll be one step further to maybe being able to do it for real. And if you are just wanting closure, well then, okay, just go ahead and finish the project, and it'll give you that closure and it will give you some practice. Now for me, I had been painting a long time already when I kept trying to paint this flower and cactus, so the problem wasn't my skill set. So I had to really look at it and figure out what I was doing wrong, why it wasn't working. And I finally figured out that it was because the cactus that I was using was not three-dimensional looking enough. I really like my paintings to just seem very three-dimensional on the canvas. And this was actually, since this was probably 10 years ago, now I just forage in the woods or the swamp or on the beach for anything that I'm going to use in a painting. But at this point, I wasn't doing that yet necessarily, and I would sometimes even buy something at the store, like a fancy flower. And that's what I was doing in this case. I was using a cactus that was in somebody's garden, and the cactus was a bunny ear cactus, I think it's called, and you've probably seen them, but they have really flat pads. You would probably, a lot of people call them leaves. I think the technical term is pads, but they were really flat. So the cactus pad that I was using, it just was really flat. And that's why the painting wasn't working for me. And I really did have to do it 3 times before I figured out that that was the problem. It just wasn't giving me the effect I wanted. So I actually went to a store and bought a potted cactus, and the potted cactus was more cylindrical in shape. So it really did give me the effect that I wanted. And finally, I was able to do a version of this painting that I was really happy with. And it went in a couple of really prestigious juried art shows. And also, I even now have a licensing deal with a puzzle company. And there's a puzzle that's been made out of this painting. I'll have a link below if you're interested in taking a look at it. The company is called Very Good Puzzle Company, which I think is an appropriate name for them. But yes, I have a licensing deal with them for this painting that I struggled for years to get right, and like I said, the 4th time was the charm. So it can be well worth it to revisit an old project. So thank you again, Celeste, for this suggestion. So again, if you're feeling drawn to revisit an old project, first ask yourself, well, why do I want to finish this? Because it's going to make a difference in how much effort you might want to put into it. And then also, well, what was it that stopped me in the first place? And again, if it's because your skill set just isn't there yet, you're probably not going to be able to get it to look exactly like you want it to or come out like you want it to, but it's probably worth just making the effort. Like I said, I did go through 3 versions of my painting before I got to the one that I was actually happy with. So let me know in the comments if you've ever done this, if you have any experience with this. Has this worked out for you? Why did you feel compelled to go back to an old project? But I really hope that you found this tip to be useful. And again, my name is Manda McKay, and thank you so much for watching.